Blake said, "Riley doesn't deserve a dime. She's out." I was standing in the hallway, one breath away from walking into that room. But what they didn't know was that I had just inherited Grandmother Rose's hidden trust, the one they tried to keep secret, and it was worth $1.2 million. By the time I was done, they'd all be begging for the scraps they tried to deny me. But first, let me take you back to where this all began. And if you're ready for a story about family betrayal that'll make your blood boil, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because this gets so much worse before it gets better. My name is Riley Parker, and at 28, I thought I understood my family. I was the middle child who kept everyone together, the one who showed up when Dad Victor needed surgery, who cleaned up after Blake's gambling debts, who spent months in hospice helping Grandmother Rose through her final days. I had a successful marketing consulting business, but I always made time for family. That was my first mistake. The Parker family dynamic was simple. Blake was the golden boy who could do no wrong. Mom Diana was the orchestrator who pulled strings behind the scenes. Dad Victor controlled the money, and I was the reliable one who never asked for anything. Rose, our grandmother, was the only one who truly saw me. She'd built the family construction business from nothing. And even at 85, she had the sharpest mind in any room. For months after Rose's diagnosis, I noticed things shifting. Family photos would accidentally exclude me. Dad would suddenly change the subject when I walked into rooms. Blake stopped returning my calls unless he needed money. Mom's smiles became tighter, more calculated. I told myself it was grief making everyone act strange. I couldn't have been more wrong. The red flags started small. During Rose's final weeks, I'd catch Diana whispering urgent phone calls that would stop the moment I appeared. "Oh, just estate planning," she'd say with that practiced smile. Dad began making comments about how I was too emotional for business matters, despite the fact that I ran my own company. Blake started treating me like an inconvenience, rolling his eyes when I'd visit Rose or help with paperwork. The disrespect escalated gradually. They'd schedule family meetings without telling me, then act surprised when I wasn't there. Important documents would mysteriously go missing when I was around. Diana would make passive-aggressive comments about how some people always expected handouts while looking directly at me. The most painful part was watching how they'd smile to my face while plotting behind my back. But I kept showing up. I kept helping. I kept believing that family meant something to them like it did to me. When Rose passed away 3 months ago, I threw myself into supporting everyone through their grief. I organized the funeral, handled the condolence calls, made sure everyone ate, all while they were planning to cut me out completely. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October. I'd gone to Dad's house to drop off some of Rose's belongings that we'd sorted through together. The front door was slightly open, and I could hear voices from his office. I was about to announce myself when I heard Blake's voice clear as day. "Don't tell her about the account. We'll say it was closed. Split it between us. Riley's out. She's been a burden long enough." I froze in that hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. A burden. The girl who paid Blake's debts when he gambled away his trust fund, who gave up client meetings to drive Dad to doctor appointments, who held Rose's hand through chemotherapy. A burden. Diana's voice cut through my shock. "Victor, she doesn't suspect anything. We've been laying the groundwork for months. Just stick to the story. The secondary trust was dissolved. She'll never know." Dad's response was the final nail. "Good. Riley gets emotional about money. Better she thinks there was nothing left than watch her fight us for what she doesn't deserve." I stood there for exactly 30 seconds, letting their words burn themselves into my memory. Then I turned around, walked to my car, and drove home in complete silence. But I wasn't broken. I was done. That night, I did something I should have done months earlier. I went to Rose's house, now technically mine according to her primary will, and opened the hidden drawer in her antique dresser. The one she'd shown me a week before she died, making me promise to look inside when they show their true colors. Inside was a manila envelope containing a flash drive, a handwritten letter, and a legal document that made my hands shake. The letter was short, written in Rose's unmistakable cursive. "Riley, blood doesn't make them worthy. If you're reading this, they've already turned on you. Take what's yours and don't look back. The truth is on the drive. Use it wisely. The legal document was an amended will, signed and notarized just 2 weeks before Rose's death. But this wasn't just about money. This changed everything. Rose had left me complete control of the family construction business, 2 rental properties, a locked investment account worth over $1 million, and most shocking of all, power of attorney over Dad's own trust that was supposed to pass to Blake. She knew. She'd seen this coming and prepared accordingly. The flash drive contained video files. Rose had been recording conversations for months. Her sharp mind had caught on to their scheme long before I did. There were recordings of Blake pressuring her to change the will, of Diana coaching him on what to say, of Dad making plans to handle Riley after the funeral. Every cruel word, every calculated move, all preserved in Rose's voice. But the most devastating recording was from just days before she died. Rose's weak but determined voice. If they try to shut you out, you don't let them. You are this family's future, not their version of it. You're the only one who loved me for me, not for what I could give you. Riley, you're the daughter I should have had. I sat in Rose's old chair until sunrise, processing the magnitude of what she'd done. She hadn't just left me an inheritance. She'd given me the tools to rebuild everything they tried to destroy. And unlike them, I was going to use those tools wisely. The next morning, I walked into the family kitchen like nothing had changed. Victor sat at his usual spot, reading financial reports. Blake scrolled through his phone, probably checking betting odds. Diana hummed while making coffee, radiating the satisfaction of someone who thought she'd already won. "Morning," I said, my voice perfectly level. Dad barely looked up. "We're busy, Riley. Family business. Can you give us some space?" I smiled, calm, controlled, practiced. "Sure. Just wanted to congratulate you." He finally met my eyes. "On what?" "On handing me everything." Diana's hand jerked, sending coffee splashing across the counter. "What are you talking about?" I reached into my purse and placed the amended will flat on the table. Blake's phone clattered to the floor. Dad stood so fast his chair scraped against the tile. Diana went completely pale. "That's not real," she whispered. "Signed, notarized, witnessed," I said calmly. "You remember Helen, Rose's friend from church? She co-signed. Dated 2 weeks before Rose passed. Guess she didn't trust the rest of you." "You stole that," Dad growled, his face reddening. "No," I replied. "I earned it." The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. I let it build, watching their faces cycle through disbelief, panic, and rage. "You thought I'd just disappear quietly," I continued, "let you erase me while I smiled through Christmas dinner. But you underestimated me." Dad stepped forward, pointing his finger at me. "You listened to me." "No," I interrupted, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You listen. The account you tried to hide? Already frozen. I contacted the bank the moment I heard your little conference last night." Blake finally found his voice. "What the hell is happening?" "Your inheritance," I said simply, "just slipped through your fingers." Diana's lip trembled. "This is your family." "No." I stood up, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "This is a lesson." I walked toward the door, not running, not hiding, just reclaiming ground they never thought I'd stand on again. "Where are you going?" Blake called after me. I paused at the threshold. "To see the lawyers. They'll be in touch. And if you think that was brutal, you haven't seen anything yet." What I did next completely destroyed their ability to fight back, and I did it all with a smile. Keep watching because the revenge is just getting started, and trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had family betray you like this. Your stories help others feel less alone. By noon the next day, 3 certified letters had been delivered. I didn't answer their frantic phone calls, 4 from Dad, 6 from Blake, 2 from Diana. Instead, I drove to the law office on Maple Street that Rose had used for 40 years. The building had that old money feel, brass fixtures, leather chairs, and the kind of quiet that comes with serious business. Mr. Davidson, Rose's attorney, greeted me with a knowing smile. "I've been expecting you," he said, sliding a thick file across his mahogany desk. "Your grandmother planned every detail down to the timing." I opened the folder, and my breath caught. The amended will wasn't just about the money. It was a complete restructuring of power. Rose had given me controlling interest in Parker Construction, the family business that Dad had run for 30 years. She'd transferred the deed to the family lake house, the 2 rental properties in downtown Riverside Heights. And most shocking of all, she'd made me executor of the family trust that controlled everything. She really gave me complete control, I whispered. She trusted you, Davidson said, and she stopped trusting them months ago. There's more. He pulled out another document, a detailed investigation Rose had commissioned into the family's finances. She'd hired a forensic accountant after noticing discrepancies in the business books. The report was damning. Blake had been using company credit cards for personal expenses. Diana had been funneling money through fake consulting fees, and Dad had been hiding assets in offshore accounts. Your grandmother documented everything, Davidson continued. She knew they'd try to contest the will, so she made sure you'd have ammunition. The phone in his office rang. Davidson glanced at the caller ID and raised an eyebrow. Victor Parker. Should I take it? Put him on speaker, I said. Dad's voice filled the room, tight with barely controlled panic. Davidson, we need to talk about this supposed will. It's clearly fraudulent. Mr. Parker, Davidson's voice was professionally cool. I witnessed your mother's signature myself. The will is entirely valid. This is insane, Dad's voice cracked. Riley has no business experience. She can't run the company. I leaned toward the speaker. Hi, Dad. Silence. I'm here with Mr. Davidson, reviewing the forensic accounting report Rose commissioned. Interesting reading. Did you know that Blake charged $18,000 to the company card last month? $6,000 of that was at a casino in Las Vegas. You don't understand, Dad started. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. Rose left detailed instructions. If you want to contest this will, it goes to probate court. Public record. Every hidden account, every forged signature, every dollar you 3 stole. It all becomes public information. Is that really what you want? The line went quiet except for Dad's heavy breathing. I'll be at the office Monday morning, I continued. 9 a.m. sharp? Board meeting, don't be late. I nodded to Davidson, who ended the call. Brutal, he said with approval. Your grandmother would be proud. That weekend, I prepared for war. I studied every contract, every financial statement, every business relationship Parker Construction had built over 4 decades. Rose had kept meticulous records, and now I understood why. She'd been preparing me for this moment without me realizing it. Sunday night, Blake showed up at my apartment. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion or alcohol, maybe both. Riley, please, he said before I could close the door. We need to talk. We had 28 years to talk, I replied. You chose silence until you needed something. This is destroying the family. No, Blake, you destroyed it. I'm just cleaning up the mess. He pushed past me into my living room, turning with desperate energy. You can't seriously run the company. Dad built that business from nothing. Actually, Rose built it from nothing. Dad just maintained it. Poorly, according to the books. Blake's face crumpled. What do you want? Money? We can work something out. I almost laughed. You're offering me money? With what? Your gambling debts? The company credit cards you maxed out? Or maybe Diana's fake consulting fees? His face went white. How did you? Rose hired investigators, Blake. She knew everything. I moved to the door, opening it wide. You have until Monday to decide how you want this to play out, quietly or in front of the entire board with reporters watching. He left without another word. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, not matching my mood perfectly. I dressed in Rose's favorite color, navy blue, and drove to the Parker Construction offices for the first time in months. The building looked smaller than I remembered, but then again, I was seeing it through different eyes now. The conference room was already full when I arrived. Dad sat at the head of the table, or where he used to sit. Blake slumped in a corner chair, looking like he'd slept in his car. The board members, Robert Morrison, Jim Walsh, and Patricia Chen, looked confused and uncomfortable. Good morning, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. Thank you all for coming. Dad stood up. This is ridiculous, Riley. You can't just... Sit down, Victor. The words came out harder than I intended, but they worked. He sat. I placed copies of the amended will in front of each board member. As of last week, I hold controlling interest in Parker Construction. Rose transferred 51% of company shares to me, along with her position as chairman of the board. Robert Morrison, the company's longtime accountant, read through the document carefully. "This appears to be legitimate," he said finally. "Victoria, were you aware of your mother's intentions?" "She was not mentally competent," Dad said quickly. "The will should be contested." I pulled out my phone and played one of Rose's recordings, clear, sharp, dated just days before her death. "I'm leaving the business to Riley because she's the only one who cares about its integrity. Victor has gotten comfortable cutting corners, and Blake treats the company like his personal piggy bank. They need to be stopped before they destroy everything I built." The room went silent. "Questions about mental competency?" I asked. Patricia Chen leaned forward. "What are your plans for the company?" "First, we're conducting a complete financial audit. I want to know where every dollar has gone for the past 5 years." I looked directly at Blake. "Second, we're implementing new policies regarding company credit cards and expense reports. No more mystery charges." Blake's face flushed red. "You can't just come in here and—" "Yes, I can," I interrupted. "It's called ownership, something you've never had to worry about, because you thought it would just fall into your lap." Dad tried a different approach. "Riley, honey, you're upset about Rose. We all are, but running a construction company isn't like your little marketing business. This requires experience." "My little marketing business?" I stood up slowly. "The one that's generated more profit in 3 years than Parker Construction has in the last 5? The one that bailed Blake out of debt twice? That little business?" Robert Morrison cleared his throat. "Actually, Victoria, Riley's assessment is accurate. Our profit margins have been declining steadily. An outside perspective might be beneficial." "Thank you, Robert," I said. "Now let's discuss the real reason for this meeting. Blake, would you like to explain the $18,000 in unauthorized charges from last month?" Blake shot to his feet. "You can't prove those were unauthorized. Actually, I can." I pulled out a folder thick with credit card statements. Vegas hotels, casino charges, expensive dinners with your girlfriend Sophia, all charged to company accounts. "That's embezzlement, Blake." The board members started whispering among themselves. Patricia Chen looked genuinely shocked. "This meeting is over," Dad announced, standing up. "No," I said calmly. "This meeting continues without you. Blake, you're suspended pending the completion of the audit. Victor, your signatory authority is revoked effective immediately. Only board-approved expenditures from now on." Dad's face went purple. "You can't do this to your own family." "You're right," I said, meeting his eyes. "Family wouldn't do this to each other. But you're not acting like family anymore, are you?" They left together, Blake muttering threats and Dad walking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. After they were gone, Robert Morrison shook his head. "Riley, I have to ask, how long have you known about the financial irregularities?" "Since Friday," I admitted. "Rose left me documentation going back 2 years." 2 years? Patricia looked stunned. "She was investigating her own son?" "She was protecting her legacy," I corrected. "And she was right to do it. The audit results came back faster than expected, and they were worse than I'd imagined. Over $200,000 had been siphoned from company accounts over 18 months. Blake's gambling debts, Diana's fabricated consulting fees, and Victor's shell companies had been bleeding the business dry while they planned to cut me out. But Rose had been smarter than all of them. She'd slowly moved assets out of their reach, documenting every transaction, building an airtight case for why the family business needed new leadership. That evening, I sat in Rose's old office, now my office, and called Diana. "We need to talk," she said before I could speak. "Do we?" "Riley, this has gone far enough. You're destroying everything over hurt feelings." I laughed, surprising myself. "Hurt feelings? Diana, you and Blake stole $200,000. That's not hurt feelings. That's felony theft." Silence. "I have an offer," she said finally. "We'll pay back what Blake took. You give us back the business, and we all pretend this never happened." "Counteroffer," I said. "You admit what you did, publicly apologize, and maybe I don't press criminal charges." "You wouldn't. Try me." She hung up. The next morning brought a surprise visitor. Sophia, Blake's girlfriend, stood in my office doorway, looking like a designer magazine had exploded on her. all perfect hair and calculated vulnerability. "Riley, this is insane," she said, perching on the edge of my desk like she owned the place. "Blake is devastated. Can't you work something out?" I looked up from the financial reports I was reviewing. "Tell Blake that if he'd treated Rose like a human being instead of a bank account, we wouldn't be having this conversation." "But your family," she pressed. "Surely that means something." "It meant everything," I said, "until they decided it meant nothing to them." Sophia's mask slipped slightly. "Look, Blake made mistakes, but destroying him won't bring your grandmother back." "This isn't about bringing Rose back," I said, standing up. "It's about honoring what she built by protecting it from people who would destroy it for quick cash." "You're being vindictive." "I'm being responsible, something your boyfriend never learned." She left in a huff, probably to report back to Blake that I was unreasonable. Good. Let them think I was emotional and irrational. It would make their next surprise even more devastating. Because what they didn't know was that Rose had left one final gift, evidence of their plans to contest the will using forged documents. She'd recorded Blake and Diana discussing how to fake her signature, how to claim she was mentally incompetent, how to drag the case through courts until I gave up from exhaustion. They thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They had no idea I was 3 moves ahead in a game they didn't even know existed. That Friday, I called a family meeting. My house, 7 p.m., mandatory attendance. When they arrived, all 3 of them looking like they were attending their own funeral, I was ready. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the living room. Diana perched on the edge of the sofa like she might need to run. Dad chose the armchair farthest from me. Blake sprawled on the love seat, trying to project defiance he clearly didn't feel. "I know about the forged documents," I said without preamble. Their faces went completely white. "What forged documents?" Diana asked, but her voice cracked on the words. I pulled out my phone and played another recording. Blake's voice, clear as day. "We just need to make it look like she was confused toward the end. A few altered documents, maybe some testimony about her mental state. Riley won't fight it forever." Blake shot to his feet. "Where did you get that?" "Rose recorded everything, Blake. Every conversation, every plan, every lie you told." I stood up slowly. "She knew you were going to try to destroy her will, so she made sure I'd have proof." Dad finally spoke, his voice hollow. "What do you want?" "I want the truth," I said. "In writing. Signed confessions detailing every dollar you stole, every document you planned to forge, every lie you told about Rose's mental state." "And if we don't?" Diana asked. "Criminal charges? All of it goes public. Blake's gambling addiction, your fake consulting business, Victor's offshore accounts, everything becomes public record. The local newspaper would love this story, prominent family torn apart by greed." The silence stretched until Blake cracked. "Fine, we'll sign whatever you want." "No," Diana said sharply. "We're not admitting to anything." I looked at her with something approaching pity. "Diana, you can sign the confession and maintain some dignity, or you can wait for the FBI to arrest you for wire fraud. Those offshore accounts, they've been flagged for suspicious activity." Her face went gray. "You're bluffing," Dad said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Am I?" I pulled out another folder. Forensic accountant's report, filed with the appropriate federal agencies. Turns out moving money overseas to avoid taxes leaves quite a paper trail. Dad sank deeper into his chair. "You have until Monday," I said. "Confessions on my desk, or I file criminal charges Tuesday morning." They left without another word, and I poured myself a glass of Rose's favorite wine. She'd been right about everything: the greed, the betrayal, the willingness to destroy family bonds for money. But she'd also been right about me. I was stronger than they thought, smarter than they assumed, and absolutely done with their games. Let me pause here and ask you something. Have you ever had someone underestimate you so completely that it became their downfall? Drop a comment below because I love reading your stories, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see how this nuclear family war ends. Trust me, what happens next will shock you. Monday morning, 3 signed confessions sat on my desk. Blake admitted to embezzling company funds for gambling debts. Diana confessed to creating false invoices for consulting work she never performed. Victor acknowledged hiding assets in offshore accounts to avoid taxes and estate planning obligations. But the most satisfying confession was the conspiracy charge. All three admitted to planning to forge Rose's signature on documents that would have invalidated her will and divided her assets according to their preferences, not her wishes. I read each confession twice, then locked them in the office safe. Insurance policies, Rose would have called them. That afternoon, I called the staff meeting I'd been planning for weeks. Parker Construction employed 43 people, from project managers to site supervisors to office staff. They deserved to know what was happening to their company. I stood in the main conference room, looking at faces I'd known since childhood. These people had worked for Rose, respected her, trusted her judgment. Now they were looking at me with uncertainty and concern. I know there have been rumors, I began, about the ownership change, about family conflict, about the future of the company. I want to address those concerns directly. I outlined the financial irregularities without naming specific family members, explained the new oversight procedures, and detailed my plans for company growth and stability. When I finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then Maria Gonzalez, the office manager who'd worked for Rose for 15 years, raised her hand. "Riley, what about the Parker name? Are you changing it?" I smiled. "The company will remain Parker Construction. Rose built this business to last generations, not to serve personal egos. We're going to honor that legacy by actually living up to it." Tom Bradley, the senior project manager, spoke up next. "What about the projects we have scheduled? Some clients might be concerned about the leadership change." "Valid concern," I acknowledged. "I'll be meeting with every major client personally over the next 2 weeks. Anyone who wants to back out of contracts can do so without penalty. But I think you'll find that most clients care more about quality work and honest billing than family drama." The questions continued for another hour, and by the end, I could see the tension leaving their faces. These people wanted stability, fair treatment, and the chance to do good work. I could give them all of that, unlike the previous management that had been bleeding the company dry. After the meeting, Maria approached me privately. "Riley, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Rose used to say you were the one who really understood the business. She said you saw the big picture while everyone else focused on the immediate profit. Was she right?" I thought about that for a moment. Rose saw potential in me that I didn't see in myself, but she also saw problems in the company that I was too trusting to notice. I'm hoping to live up to her faith while learning from her wisdom. Maria nodded. "She'd be proud of how you're handling this." "I hope so." That evening, Blake called me. His voice was different, smaller, defeated. "Riley, I need help." "What kind of help?" "I have a problem. The gambling thing, it's worse than you know. I owe people money, bad people, and without the company income." His voice trailed off. "How much do you owe?" 60,000, maybe 70. I closed my eyes. Even now, even after everything, part of me wanted to help him. That's what family does, right? But then I remembered Rose's words about enabling versus helping. "Blake, I can't give you money. I'm not asking for a gift, a loan with interest, payment plan, whatever you want. You signed a confession admitting to embezzling from the company. If I give you money now, it looks like I'm paying you to stay quiet." "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Get help. Real help. There are programs for gambling addiction, debt counseling services, legal aid if these people are threatening you. You're just going to let me crash and burn?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Blake, I love you, but I can't save you from consequences you created. Rose tried to shield all of us from reality, and look where it got us. Sometimes hitting bottom is the only way to start climbing back up." He hung up without another word. 2 days later, Diana requested a meeting. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. She looked like she'd aged years in the past month, gray streaks in her hair that I'd never noticed, lines around her eyes that seemed deeper. "I underestimated you," she said without preamble. "Everyone did." "Rose trained you for this, didn't she? All those hours you spent with her, helping with her business correspondence, organizing her files, she was preparing you to take over." I sipped my coffee, waiting to see where this was going. "I want you to know that I never hated you," Diana continued. "I was protecting what I thought was best for the family." "By excluding me from it?" "By preserving resources for the people who would need them most." Blake has problems, expensive problems. Victor's getting older, and his investment track record is questionable at best. I thought you were the most capable of taking care of yourself. I almost laughed. So you punished me for being competent? I made a strategic decision based on incomplete information. You made a selfish decision based on greed and favoritism. Diana's mask finally slipped completely. Fine. You want honesty? Yes, Blake was always my favorite. Yes, I thought Victor deserved to maintain control of what he'd built. And yes, I thought you were strong enough to succeed without an inheritance, while they weren't strong enough to succeed with it. At least you're being honest now. What happens next, Riley? You've won. You have everything. What do you do with it? I looked at this woman who had helped raise me, who had been a second mother for most of my life, who had ultimately chosen to betray me for money and favoritism. I'm going to build something better, I said finally. Something that actually helps people instead of just enriching the people who own it. Parker Construction is going to be known for integrity again, not for cutting corners and hiding assets. And us? Your family? You made your choice about what family means. I'm making mine. I left her sitting there, probably wondering how she'd so completely misread the situation. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired and sad and strangely empty. That night, I drove out to Rose's grave. The headstone was simple granite with her name, dates, and a single line. She built things that lasted. I sat on the cold ground and told her about everything that had happened since the will reading. I think I'm doing this right, I said to the headstone. But it's harder than you made it look. They're still my family, even if they don't act like it. The wind rustled through the oak trees she'd loved, and for a moment I could almost hear her voice. Family isn't about blood, dear. It's about who shows up when everything falls apart. 2 months later, Parker Construction landed the biggest contract in company history, a mixed-use development project worth $2.3 million. The client specifically mentioned our reputation for honest dealing and quality work as deciding factors. Maria had been right. Most people cared more about integrity than family drama. Blake was in rehab, finally getting help for his gambling addiction. The loan sharks had been handled through legal channels rather than family bailouts. Victor had moved to Florida and was apparently dating a woman he'd met at a grief counseling group. Diana had started her own consulting business, legitimate this time, and was slowly rebuilding her reputation. We didn't talk much, but we were all still alive and moving forward separately. Maybe that was its own kind of success. I kept Rose's office exactly as she'd left it, down to the coffee mug on her desk and the family photos on her bookshelf. But I added new photos, too. The construction crew celebrating our big contract, the staff at our first annual company picnic, me shaking hands with the mayor at a community development meeting. Rose had been right about almost everything, but she'd been especially right about this. Sometimes you have to tear down what's broken before you can build something better. The Parker family, as I'd known it, was gone, but Parker Construction was stronger than ever. I was working late one evening when my phone rang. Blake's number. Hey. His voice was clearer than it had been in months. Hey yourself. How's the program going? Hard. Really hard. But good, I think. I wanted to call and tell you something. I waited. You were right, about everything. The gambling, the stealing, the way we treated you. Rose knew what she was doing when she left you in charge. Blake. No, let me finish. I spent my whole life thinking I deserved things just because I existed. That being the oldest son meant automatic inheritance, automatic respect, automatic forgiveness for every stupid thing I did. But respect has to be earned, and I never earned it. I felt tears starting and blinked them back. I don't know if we can ever be a real family again, he continued. I know I burned that bridge with dynamite, but I want you to know that I'm proud of what you're doing with the company. Rose would be proud too. Thank you, I managed. And Riley, I'm sorry. For all of it, you deserved better from all of us. After he hung up, I sat in Rose's chair and cried for the first time since this whole mess started. Not from sadness exactly, but from relief. Maybe it was possible to rebuild more than just a business. Maybe family could be repaired too. One honest conversation at a time. 3 months later, I was reviewing quarterly reports when Maria knocked on my office door. There's someone here to see you, she said. Says it's personal. I looked up to see Victor standing in the doorway, hat in his hands, looking nervous and older than I remembered. "Dad? Riley, can we talk?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He sat down carefully, like he wasn't sure he was welcome. "Nice office," he said, looking around. "You've kept it exactly like she had it." Rose knew what she was doing. Yes, she did. He was quiet for a moment. "That's actually why I'm here. I wanted to tell you something about that last conversation you overheard." I waited. What you heard was true, but it wasn't the whole story. Your mother and Blake, they'd been pressuring me for months to change the will, to cut you out. I kept refusing, but they wore me down. That night, I'd finally agreed to go along with their plan. "I know, Dad. I was there." But what you didn't hear was what happened after you left. I called Rose the next morning and told her everything. About the pressure, about the plan, about how wrong it felt. She told me she'd already handled it, that she'd been expecting something like this. I stared at him. "You warned her?" "I told her the truth, that her son was weak and her daughter-in-law was greedy and her grandson was desperate, and that her granddaughter was the only one who loved the family more than the money." The silence stretched between us, heavy with months of hurt and misunderstanding. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked. "Because I was ashamed, because I'd let them convince me, even for a few hours, that cutting you out was the right thing to do. Because I was a coward who couldn't stand up to his own wife and son." Victor looked down at his hands. "Rose didn't just leave you everything because she loved you most, Riley. She left it to you because you were the only one she could trust to do the right thing with it. And she was right." I felt something shift inside my chest, a knot of anger I hadn't realized I was still carrying. "The business is thriving," I said quietly. "We're hiring again, taking on bigger projects, building a reputation for integrity. I know, I've been following the news, the Chamber of Commerce Award, the Community Development Contract, the employee satisfaction ratings. You've done in 6 months what I couldn't do in 6 years. Because you were too busy managing Blake and Diana to focus on actually running the company." He nodded. "Rose tried to tell me that for years. She said I was enabling their worst impulses while ignoring their potential for growth. She was right about that, too." We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of lost time and missed opportunities settling between us. "Can I ask you something?" Victor said finally. "Of course. Do you think there's any chance for us? Not the business, not the money, just us? Father and daughter?" I looked at this man who had raised me, who had taught me to drive and helped me with math homework and walked me down the aisle at my college graduation. Underneath all the mistakes and weakness and poor choices, he was still my dad. "I think," I said carefully, "that family relationships have to be rebuilt on honesty. No more secrets, no more enabling, no more choosing sides. If you can do that, then yes, I think there's a chance." His eyes filled with tears. "I'd like to try." "Then let's try." He stood up to leave, then paused at the door. "Riley, yeah? Your grandmother would be so proud of the woman you've become, but I think she'd be even prouder of your capacity for forgiveness." After he left, I sat back in Rose's chair and thought about forgiveness, about family, about the difference between enabling and helping. Rose had been right about so many things, but maybe she'd been wrong about one. Maybe family could be worth fighting for, even when they made terrible choices. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Diana. "Riley?" She sounded surprised. "I wanted to talk to you about something." "Okay." "I've been thinking about what you said, about making strategic decisions based on incomplete information. I think we all did that. I made assumptions about your motivations, just like you made assumptions about mine. Where are you going with this?" "I'm going somewhere that might surprise you. I want to offer you a consulting contract." Silence. "Riley, I don't think that's—" "Hear me out. You're good at what you do when you're doing it honestly. Parker Construction is growing fast, and we need someone who understands complex financial planning and estate management, someone who knows the family history and the business culture." "You're offering me a job?" "After everything? I'm offering you a chance to rebuild trust. Professional relationship first, family relationship we'll see." "Why?" "Because Rose believed in second chances for people who earned them, and because spite is exhausting, Diana. I'm tired of being angry." I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Standard consulting rates, 6-month trial period, everything above board and documented. No special treatment, but no punishment either. I'll think about it. After I hung up, I opened Rose's desk drawer and pulled out the last thing she'd left me, a sealed envelope marked, "When you're ready to forgive them." Inside was a single sheet of paper with her handwriting. "Riley, by the time you read this, you'll have won. You'll have saved the business, exposed the truth, and probably spent months being righteously angry. Good, you had every right to be angry. But now comes the harder part, deciding what kind of person you want to be when you have all the power. I raised them all, you know. Victor, Diana through marriage, Blake from birth. Their flaws are partly my fault for loving them too much to make them face consequences. Don't repeat my mistakes, but don't let their mistakes turn you hard. You have the strength to be both just and merciful. Use it wisely. With all my love and faith in your judgment, Rose." I read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it back in the drawer. Rose's final lesson: winning isn't just about getting justice. It's about deciding what to do with that justice once you have it. 6 months later, Diana accepted the consulting position. Blake completed his rehabilitation program and started working construction for a different company, building his reputation back from the ground up. Victor visited once a month, and we were slowly, carefully rebuilding a relationship based on honesty instead of assumption. The family dinner table would never look the same, and maybe that was for the best. But we were learning to be family in a new way, one that respected boundaries, rewarded integrity, and demanded accountability from everyone. Parker Construction celebrated its best year in company history. We'd grown from 43 employees to 62, opened a second office location, and established a scholarship fund for local trade schools in Rose's name. On the anniversary of Rose's death, I stood at her grave again, this time with a small bouquet of her favorite flowers, white roses mixed with baby's breath. "We made it through the first year," I told her headstone. "It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't easy, but we made it. The business is strong, the family is different but healing, and I think I'm becoming the person you believed I could be." The wind picked up, scattering a few petals across the grass. I knelt down and placed my hand on the cool granite. "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for trusting me with your legacy. And thank you for teaching me that sometimes the best way to love someone is to refuse to enable their worst choices." I stayed there until sunset, telling Rose about the new contracts, the employee promotions, the community projects we were planning, about Blake's progress and Victor's attempts at rebuilding our relationship, about Diana's surprisingly valuable contributions to the business strategy. As I walked back to my car, I realized that Rose had given me more than money or property or even justice. She'd given me the chance to become the kind of person who could handle all of those things responsibly, the kind of person who could be trusted with power, because she understood that real power comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. That night, I sat in my home office reviewing plans for the Rose Parker Community Center, a project that would provide job training and financial literacy education for people struggling with addiction, debt, and family crisis. It seemed like the right way to honor her memory while helping people avoid the mistakes that had nearly destroyed my family. My phone buzzed with a text from Blake. 6 months clean and sober. Started my own savings account. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave up on myself. Then one from Victor. Saw the article about the community center in the paper. Your grandmother would be over the moon. Proud of you, kiddo. And finally, one from Diana. Quarterly projections look good. Also, thank you for the second chance. I won't waste it. I looked around my office at the photos on the walls. Rose and me at my college graduation, the Parker construction crew at our last company picnic, Blake's certificate from rehab graduation, a picture of Victor and me at last month's father-daughter dinner. Different family, same love. Broken and rebuilt, scarred but stronger. Rose had been right about everything, but especially about this. Sometimes you have to lose a family to find out what family really means. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones most worth saving, not from consequences, but from themselves. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, already thinking about tomorrow's challenges and opportunities, the business to run, the relationships to nurture, the community to serve, the legacy to honor. But tonight, for the first time in over a year, I fell asleep, feeling genuinely at peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was honest. And in a family built on secrets and lies, honesty was the greatest inheritance of all. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt underestimated or betrayed by people who should have protected you, I want you to know that you're not alone. Drop a comment below sharing your own story of overcoming family drama or standing up for yourself when no one else would. Your courage might inspire someone else who's facing their own impossible situation. And if you want to hear more stories about people who turned their pain into power, who rebuilt their lives after betrayal, who chose justice over revenge and healing over hatred, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because there are so many more stories to tell, and every single one of them matters. Remember, you are not responsible for other people's choices, but you are responsible for your own. Choose wisdom over anger, boundaries over enabling, and integrity over convenience. And never ever let anyone convince you that you deserve less than the truth. Sometimes the family that betrays you gives you the greatest gift of all, the chance to discover who you really are when you stop trying to be who they wanted you to be. Rose knew that. And now, finally, so did I.